The message came at 3:14 in the morning. Not a text, not a file, a direct voice call, which meant something had already gone wrong before I even picked up. I answered standing up, old habit from old years I don't revisit. The voice belonged to Leon Cross, Earth's Deputy Secretary of Interstellar Affairs. Leon had the kind of voice built for conference rooms and official statements. He had never once called me before business hours in 6 years of working together. "Marcus," he said, "shuttle 2 hours north pad." "Where am I going?" "Galactic Council flagship, full conclave session, all 17 delegations present." I looked at the city through the window. The lights were the kind of dim that happens in the hour before the world fully wakes up. Everything down there still looked like it belonged to itself. "They've been requesting you by name for 9 days, Leon said. "We delayed as long as we could. It's time." "Why me specifically?" He paused. Leon Cross does not pause. Leon Cross fills silence with prepared language the way other people fill glasses with water. When he paused, I understood that we were in territory his briefing documents had not covered. "We asked all 17 delegations to explain the urgency," he said finally. "Standard diplomatic courtesy. They all sent back the same word, all 17, different languages, different translators, same word when it came through." "What word?" He said it like it had weight. "Please." I pulled on my jacket in the dark without turning the lights on. I have been moving through dark rooms since I was 9 years old, and some habits do not need reasons anymore. Kate Linden was already aboard the shuttle when I reached the North Pad. She ran interstellar liaison for the Secretary's office. 29. From a small English town whose name I always mispronounced and she always corrected with the same patience. She had a briefing file on her tablet and a coffee she was not drinking. She held the file out without looking up. 47 pages. "Summary?" I asked. "I wrote the summary. It will make you more confused, not less." "How many of these pages are things I actually need to know before walking into that chamber?" She considered this seriously. That was the thing about Kate. She took questions seriously, even the ones that were jokes. 3, she said, maybe 4. I read 4 pages somewhere over the outer transit lane and then looked at the viewport for the rest of the journey. Stars from out here are not what they look like from the ground. From the ground, they look like decoration. Out here, they look like distance, and distance is a different thing entirely. The Galactic Council flagship bore the name Conclave Eternal, which told you everything about the people who had chosen it. It hung in the dark like something that had always been there and had no interest in going anywhere. The docking alone took 40 minutes. The security process added another 30. Then there was the hallway. The hallway was a straight corridor approximately 400 meters long with nothing in it except light and ceiling height. It had been built to make visitors feel small. Every step down it reminded you how far from home you were and how little of what waited on the other end had anything to do with your world. It was excellent at its job. The reception chamber was already occupied when we arrived. 17 delegations, 40-some representatives, curved obsidian walls running the length of the room, a ceiling fixture made of something that looked like crystallized light, and every being in that room turned toward the entrance the moment I walked through it. Not the way a room watches someone important enter. The way a room watches something they need arrive. Ambassador Vral 9 of the Vreth hegemony reached me first. 7 feet of measured authority, 4 arms arranged in a formal greeting posture, eyes that caught light the way still water catches it. Their translator badge had been calibrated for human speech so precisely it even picked up my Chicago accent. The greeting came through as, "We welcome Envoy Vega in the spirit of mutual preservation and shared cosmic stewardship." The room said something shorter. "We are running out of time, and you are the last thing we have left to try." The reception ran 2 hours. The real content inside it was 8 minutes of actual meaning, scattered across pleasantries and refreshments and small talk that had been designed to look like diplomacy. When the refreshments were cleared, Delegate Orvanthal of the Council's governing body presented the terms. Old, compact, gray from head to foot, the kind of gray that is not age but is something closer to permanence. The translator rendered their voice as calm. The content underneath the calm was not. We are presenting Earth's government with a formal neutrality agreement, Orvanthal said. The provisions are as follows. Earth and all human territories remain outside the current conflict. The Council extends full protective status to your home system. In exchange, humanity agrees to remain within your solar system for the duration of hostilities. I let the sentence finish. The duration, I said. Yes. Of the current hostilities. Correct. The hostilities that have been running for approximately 300 years. Something moved across Orvanthal's face, something careful. We remain cautiously optimistic about a resolution. 300 years, cautiously optimistic. I looked at the room, 40-something beings, all still, all watching me with the focused attention of people who had come very far to hear one person say yes and were not certain they would. I asked whether the second round of refreshments was still coming. Kate made a sound beside me. Vral 9's translator clicked twice. That click meant the device had encountered a phrase with no practical cross-cultural equivalent. We were even. I thanked all 17 delegations for their time and their care and the hospitality of the reception. I told Orvanthal I would need to consider the terms. I used the 4 handshakes and 13 nods the briefing file had prepared me for. Then I left. In the corridor outside, Kate walked with me without speaking. She had learned my tells over 3 years. She knew the difference between the silence that meant I was thinking and the silence that meant I had already thought. We stopped at the wide viewport at the corridor's end. 2 war fleets occupied opposite edges of visible sky, patient and enormous, and aimed at each other across a gap so large that the math for it required a different kind of number than the ones I grew up with. The treaty language was pre-drafted, Kate said. All 17 delegations arrived with the same document, same structure, same clauses. They did not come here to negotiate. No, I said. They came here to get a signature. Yes. She turned toward me. The coffee cup rotated once in her hand. Marcus, they are not trying to protect us. I had known it from the moment Vral 9 looked at me from across the reception hall. Not with hope. With the careful, measured attention of someone watching a fire, they wanted to be somewhere it could not spread. No, I said. Kate's face moved through several things. Oh, she said quietly. Yeah. The silence between us held the weight of what we were not saying yet. Outside the viewport, neither fleet moved. They were very good at waiting. I was not. They gave us quarters aboard the Conclave Eternal while the consideration period was in effect. 2 rooms, a shared workspace, a viewport facing the wrong direction. The flagship's designers had apparently felt that guests did not need to see the war while they were deciding how they felt about it. I requested a different room. Nobody argued. Nobody ever argues with small requests during a consideration period. Small requests cost nothing and make people feel managed. The new room's viewport faced both fleets. I stood at it for a long time that first night. By morning, Kate had received 17 separate data packages from the Council archives, historical overviews, technical summaries, conflict background documents, standard material, the kind of thing that takes months to read and gives you the comfortable feeling of being informed without the uncomfortable feeling of actually knowing anything. She had also, through a contact I never asked about, received something else. She brought it to the workspace on her tablet and set it on the table without speaking. Then she took her coffee cup and walked to the far corner of the room, which was the tell I had learned from her. When Kate went to the far corner, whatever was on the table was not going to be comfortable. The file header read, Cross-Species Threat Assessment, Classification Level 7. Jointly originating from the Vreth Hegemony Intelligence Office and the Kale Dominion Strategic Forecasting Division. 2 different governments. 2 enemies. 1 file. They produced this independently, Kate said from the corner. The hegemony ran their assessment, the Dominion ran theirs. They did not know each other was doing it, did not share data, did not communicate. Went 62 years ago, both of them. 62 years ago, I had not yet been born. My parents were children. The last human to set foot on another planet had done so 14 years prior, and most people at the time thought that mission was the most important thing humanity would ever do. 62 years ago, 2 alien civilizations that had been trying to end each other for 2.5 centuries had stopped long enough to model us. What did they model specifically? I asked. Kate came back to the table and pulled up the abstract. She translated the summary herself, because she did not trust the official translator for this. 3 scenarios, she said. Human neutrality, human alliance with the hegemony, human alliance with the Dominion. And the alliance scenarios both resulted in one side winning the war inside 40 years. That sounds like a good outcome for whoever we allied with. No, Kate said, read the rest. The rest was short. In the scenario where humanity allied with the hegemony, the Dominion fell. The remaining hegemony forces then spent the next 60 years managing an Earth that had learned what it was capable of and was no longer interested in being managed. The casualty projections went places I did not want to read twice. In the scenario where humanity allied with the Dominion, the same thing happened in reverse. The neutral scenario was worse. In the neutral scenario, humanity eventually entered the conflict on its own terms, in its own time, for reasons neither model had been fully able to predict. And when that happened, neither side won. The projections did not show a victor. They showed an ending. I closed the file. I opened it again. I closed it again. Both models, I said, both independent, same output. Yes. They have been sitting on this for 62 years. Yes. All 17 delegations, the entire council, 62 years of knowing that if humanity ever. Yes, Kate said. And the neutrality treaty is not protection, I said. It is a fence. Kate said nothing. A fence. A box. A document that would put 17 signatures around humanity and make it legally, diplomatically, and practically impossible for us to do what both enemy civilizations had spent 6 decades fearing we would do. Not because we had been aggressive, not because we had demonstrated hostile intent, because of projections, because 2 species who had been trying to end each other for 3 centuries had both run the numbers and arrived at the same conclusion about a civilization that had barely made it past its own moon. I went back to my room. The viewport was dark except for the 2 fleets and the space between them, which was the most expensive and dangerous piece of nothing in the known galaxy. I did 47 push-ups on the floor beside the bed. I always stop at 47. It is not a number with meaning. It is the number I reached before the mission briefing came in 6 years ago over the Kepler reach, and 11 people went home in sealed containers with official designations, and a formal apology from a government office that classified the incident as a navigational anomaly. 47, every morning, every night. I stopped at 47 and stayed on the floor. Then I got up. The next 3 days were what the council called informational briefings, and what I called being shown enough of the war to make the neutrality agreement look reasonable. It was a well-constructed series of presentations, balanced, thorough, designed to communicate scale. The Vrethkale conflict had destroyed 11 inhabited systems over 3 centuries, not damaged, destroyed, turned into the kind of places that appear on hazard navigation charts, over 6 billion lives across both sides. Weapons designed, deployed, and then banned by mutual agreement, not because either side developed a conscience, but because they were also destroying the territory both sides wanted to eventually keep. The Council's lead presenter, Councillor Vrethsal, had 3 decades of mediation experience and spoke about the casualties the way accountants speak about annual losses: significant, regrettable, within projected parameters. I asked questions that were not on the briefing agenda. I asked about civilian infrastructure damage specifically. I asked about evacuation protocols for inhabited worlds in contested zones. I asked about recovery programs for systems declared hazard zones that still had living populations on their outer rings. Vrethsal answered politely and at length. The answers added up to the same thing. There were none, not inadequate, not underfunded, not planned for a future budget cycle. None. On the 4th day, a young aide brought me a tablet with a supplementary cultural overview, a section on human military history that the Council's Xenosociological Archive had compiled over several decades. 4,200 hours of documented human conflict, footage, records, field reports, first-hand accounts. I asked when the collection had started. The aide checked their device. Collection began approximately 80 years ago. What prompted it? The aide checked again. The Hiroshima event. I handed the tablet back. Kate was in the corridor when I came out. She had been doing her own research. Her eyes had the particular flatness of someone who had read something hours ago and was still quietly processing it. The Cultural Archive, I said. Yes, she said. They have been watching us since we split the atom. Yes. 80 years of documentation and 62 years of threat projections. I looked at the corridor ceiling. They built this treaty before we ever became a problem. They built it, Kate said carefully, in case you ever became one. That was the kinder reading. And both sides of the war agreed to try to use it, I said. 2 civilizations that have not agreed on anything in 3 centuries agreed to try to sign us into a box together. Kate held her coffee cup in both hands, did not drink. What does that tell you? She asked. I thought about the projections. The same outputs from 2 separate models. The same conclusion from 2 organizations that had been doing everything in their power to end each other for 300 years. It tells me, I said, that the one thing the Vreth and the Kale have in common is us. Kate went very still. That is not comforting, she said. No. That is the most alarming thing you have said since we got here. I know. She looked at her cup. She set it on the windowsill. She left it there. On the 5th day, they brought out the full projections. Not the abstracts, not the summaries. The full models, unsealed, translated, and presented on a screen in a briefing room clearly built for exactly this kind of moment. Round table, low light, chairs designed to hold very different body shapes because the Council needed everyone seated for this. Vral 9 was there. Orvan Thal was there. 3 Council mediators and 2 independent translators. They walked us through both models, the hegemony version and the dominion version side by side, different data sets, different methodologies, different assumptions about human behavior. Same terminal output. When the presentation ended, Orvan Thal folded their small gray hands on the table. We are not presenting this as a threat assessment. We are presenting it as context for the neutrality agreement. The agreement is not confinement. It is protection. I looked at the screen. The same conclusion from 2 different enemies, 62 years old, sitting between us on a table built for beings much larger than me. Who decided? I asked, not to tell us about these projections when they were made. Orventhal did not answer right away. It was felt, they said finally, that the information would be destabilizing. For humanity. For everyone. I stood up. I would like the evening, I said. I will have a response in the morning. They gave me the evening. I spent it at the viewport. 47 push-ups. Both fleets patient in the dark. And the first shape of something I did not have a name for yet, growing quiet and steady and useful in the part of me that had been doing this since Kepler, since 47, since the form letter that called 11 people a navigational anomaly. By morning, I had a name for it. By morning, I was ready. The treaty draft arrived at 800. Delivered by the same nervous young aide who had brought me the cultural archive tablet, formally sealed, accompanied by a small hegemony flower arrangement that I was told represented the sincerity of the offer. I put the flowers in the viewport's light where they could get something resembling sun. I did not open the treaty. Kate had already read it. She was sitting at the workspace with her coffee and 3 pages of handwritten notes when I came in, and she looked up with the expression of someone who had spent the night deciding how to say something. "The colony provisions," she said. "Show me." She turned to page 11. The treaty was written in standard conclave diplomatic language, which ran long and careful, and wrapped its actual content in so much courtesy that you had to do real work to find what it was saying. Kate had done the work. "Protective provisions extend to Earth and its primary sovereign designation," she read. "Secondary and tertiary designations, meaning colonies, research outposts, and outer settlements, are addressed under a separate annexation clause pending individual review." "Pending individual review," I said. "The review timeline." She showed me. 90 standard cycles, which translated in human time to approximately 98 days. I looked at the clause. I read it twice. I read the definition of secondary designation in the glossary at the back. The definition was broad enough to cover every human settlement outside the home system, every colony, every outpost, every ship more than 3 AU from Earth with a residential designation. "Kate," I said. "Yes." "How many human settlements currently exist outside the home system?" She pulled up the number she had already found. 47 active settlements, 8 research stations, 2 transit colonies, 1 generational settlement running long enough to have a second-generation native-born population. "Harvest Station," I said. Her hand went still on the tablet. Harvest Station was not the largest colony, not the oldest, not the most strategically significant thing humans had placed outside the home system. It was a food production and distribution colony, established 6 years ago, with approximately 40,000 residents, farmers, medical personnel, educators, a population that had moved to the outer reach to grow things and tend things and build a community at the edge of what humanity had managed to reach. "It is in the contested zone," Kate said. "Yes." "The Kale offensive has been moving toward that quadrant for a month." "Yes." "At current speed of advance." "Kate." 14 days, she said, maybe 12. I looked at the treaty document. 98 days for the annexation clause review. 12 days before Harvest Station sat inside an active combat zone. The math did not require a calculator. The math did not require a second read. The math was the kind that lands in your stomach and stays there and does not move. I put the treaty face down on the table. "Did anyone on the council flag this during the drafting process?" I said. Kate looked at her notes. "The colonial provisions were drafted 18 months ago," she said. "The Kale offensive into that quadrant began 7 months ago. 11 months of knowing, 7 months of watching, a treaty that protected Earth specifically, drafted with full awareness of what it did not protect." I thought about Orvanthal's hands folded on the briefing table. It was felt that the information would be destabilizing. I thought about 62 years of projections, the fence, the box, the very careful language. I thought about a form letter that called 11 people, a navigational anomaly. "Get me a meeting," I said, "full council this morning." They gave me the afternoon instead. The full council chamber was larger than the reception hall, 700 feet of curved black ceiling, a central dais, seats arranged in concentric arcs, each row slightly higher than the one before it, so that the person standing at the center always felt the weight of the room pressing down from every direction. I stood at the center dais. Orvanthal was present. Vral 9 was present. 14 of the 17 delegations had sent their primary representatives. The other 3 had sent deputies, which meant they were watching live feeds from somewhere else and were not interested in being on record for whatever this was about to become. Smart. I had a 7-page prepared statement that Kate had helped me write. I had read it back to her that morning, and she had told me I was doing the thing again, and I had said yes, and she had said fine, do it then. I set the statement face down on the dais. I looked at Orvanthal. "Harvest Station," I said. The chamber went quiet, not the anticipatory quiet of a room that does not know what is coming, the specific quiet of a room that does. "I am aware that the Council is aware of Harvest Station's position," I said. "I am aware that this position was known during the drafting of the colonial provisions. I am aware that the annexation clause review timeline is 98 days, and that the Kale offensive is approximately 12 days from Harvest Station's coordinates." Orvanthal said nothing. "I would like to hear," I said, "what the Council's contingency is for the 40,000 people currently residing there." Vral 9's forearms shifted. One of the Dominion proxies, a small delegation that technically should not have been in this room but somehow was, went very still. Orvanthal spoke, measured, careful. The colonial annexation clause was designed to ensure thorough and appropriate review of each settlement's individual circumstances. It is a protective framework. "It is a 98-day delay," I said, "for a 12-day problem. The timeline can be reviewed." "In how long?" Orvanthal's hands folded. "These are complex administrative processes." 40,000 people, I said. Farmers, teachers, a medical team of 200, a residential population with a mean age of 34. What is the Council's plan for these 40,000 people in 12 days? The silence that followed was not a diplomatic silence. It was the silence of a question that everyone in the room knew the answer to, and no one wanted to say out loud. There was no plan. There had never been a plan. Harvest Station was inside the colonial provisions review window, which meant it was inside the legal gap between what the treaty protected and what it intended to protect someday, pending review. Pending. I picked up the 7-page statement. I folded it in half. "Earth will not be signing the neutrality agreement," I said. The room broke open. Not loudly, not all at once. It broke the way old materials break, slowly from inside, multiple points failing in sequence. Vral 9's translator ran at double speed trying to keep up with the room's reaction. 2 hegemony delegates stood up. 1 council mediator spoke urgently into a communication device. The 3 deputy representatives watching the feed from somewhere else were probably having a very bad afternoon. Orvanthal raised one hand. The room settled. "Envoy Vega," they said, "the agreement as written is a document that protects Earth while leaving 40,000 of Earth's people inside an active war zone," I said, "with a review timeline that ends 12 weeks after they stop being people and start being a casualty notation on a conflict summary." Orvanthal looked at me for a long moment. I looked back. "The terms," they said carefully, "could be subject to amendment. Then amend them, put every human settlement under immediate protection, all 47 active colonies, all 8 research stations, all residential designations regardless of distance from the home system, immediate, not pending, not under review. Envoy, Vral 9 said. Their translator was running at full speed now. You must understand the operational complexity. I understand the complexity completely, I said. If you extend immediate protection to every human settlement, you have to tell both sides of the war that a significant portion of the contested zone is now off limits. You have to redraw engagement boundaries that have been set for decades. You have to get a 3-century-old conflict to change its geography on short notice. Vral 9 said nothing. I understand why you would rather not do that, I said. I understand why the colonial provision review timeline was a much cleaner solution. I am telling you that Earth's answer to the clean solution is no. I left the folded statement on the dais. Kate was in the corridor. She had been listening on the auxiliary feed. She knew me well enough to know that I had understood how this meeting was going to end before I walked into it. She looked at me with the expression of someone who was deciding whether to argue or accept. She accepted. What now? She said. I looked at the viewport at the corridor's end. Both fleets, still patient, still enormous, still aimed. We call home, I said, and then we find out what we are actually capable of. Kate looked out the viewport. That is what they are afraid of, she said quietly. Yes, I said. Are you afraid of it? I thought about 47. I thought about 11 names. I thought about a word coming back the same through 17 different translators from 17 different species. Please. I am something, I said. I have not decided what yet. Earth's response to my recommendation took 6 hours. 6 hours was faster than I expected. 6 hours meant someone had already been thinking about this. The authorization that came back through Leon Cross was not long. It was not hedged. It did not have a committee name on it or a review panel or a recommended timeline for further deliberation. It was 8 lines, direct language, clear terms. It ended with, you have full operational discretion. Do what needs doing. I read it 3 times. Full operational discretion had never appeared in any document with my name on it before. Government bodies do not give individuals full operational discretion the way you hand someone keys to a car. They give guidelines and oversight committees and 17 different ways to say proceed with caution. 8 lines, full operational discretion. Leon Cross had not written those words. Those words had come from somewhere above Leon Cross. I sent back one word, understood. I started making calls. The first call was to Owen Hale, Earth Defense Coordination, who had been my commanding officer for 4 years before the Kepler incident turned his division into a classified footnote and turned mine into something that officially no longer existed. Owen had the specific energy of a man who wakes up ready for a problem and is never happier than when the problem turns out to be genuinely difficult. Talk to me, he said when he picked up. I talked to him for 22 minutes. When I finished, there was a pause. 12 days, he said. 12, maybe 10. And we are not allied with either side. We are not allied with anyone. Another pause, the kind Owen uses when he is not calculating. He has decided and is letting the decision settle before he opens his mouth. Well, he said, that will be interesting. It was the best possible thing he could have said. The second call was to Nina Park at Earth Interstellar Survey, who had spent 8 years mapping the contested zone region for resource assessment and knew the spatial geography of the Harvest Station quadrant better than anyone alive and probably better than the fleets who had been operating in it for decades. She was awake when I called. It was 2 in the morning her time. I have been waiting for this call for 3 days, she said. I had not told anyone I was making it. How? I said. Because the treaty made the news 2 days ago, and anyone who read the colonial provision clauses and knew where Harvest Station was sitting would have done the same math you did, she said. What do you need? I told her. She started pulling files before I finished the sentence. The third call was to Dean Alderton, administrator of Harvest Station. He picked up on the first ring. Mr. Vega, he said. He had a North England accent and the particular calm of someone who had spent 6 years building something from nothing and learned that you either stay calm or you stop building. We have been following the news. What is the mood there? Steady, he said. People are concerned, not panicked. There is a difference. Dean, we are going to get everyone out. I need you to trust me and follow the evacuation protocol when it comes through. When, he said. Not if. When, I confirmed. He was quiet for a moment. How long, he said. 11 days. We will have you out in 11 days. The Council Treaty. The treaty, I said, is not the plan. Owen moved first. He had people in position within 36 hours, which was faster than the Council's own reaction time to the news that Earth had declined to sign. The Council's response to the declination had been a series of diplomatic messages that grew progressively more formal as the hours passed, which was how you could measure their concern. The more formal the language, the more alarmed the people using it. I did not respond to the messages. I sent one communication to Orvanthal. We will resolve the Harvest Station situation. Please stay out of our way. 3 words came back through Orvanthal's translator. That is inadvisable. I did not respond. The Kale offensive ran along established engagement lines. 300 years of war had given both sides a very clear understanding of where the other would be, what movements meant what, and what responses to expect from which provocations. They had developed over 3 centuries a shared language of conflict, a mutual understanding built from accumulated experience. We did not speak that language. We had not studied it. We had not been present for the 300 years in which it developed. We came in from outside with a different set of reference points and a problem we intended to solve regardless of what the established language required. The first thing Owen's teams did was unconventional in the sense that it made no recognizable military sense by any established doctrine that either side used. They set up a civilian communications relay at the outer edge of the contested zone, fully flagged, fully identified, broadcasting on open frequencies, directly adjacent to the Kale offensive's projected advance line. Not a weapon, not a defense platform, a relay station, openly civilian, openly identified. Under the war's established protocols, a civilian communications relay in a clearly marked position was off-limits for engagement. The rules both sides had agreed to over 3 centuries said so without ambiguity. To engage it, the Kale advance would have to route around it. The route added 6 days to their projected timeline. 6 days was not 11 days. Owen's teams put up 3 more relays. The second development did not come from Owen, it came from Nina. Nina had 8 years of mapping data for that quadrant. She knew where the old survey satellites were. She knew which ones were still running on automated power cycles and which ones had drifted into signal shadow. She also knew that the Kale Dominion's long-range targeting coordination used a specific frequency band for their arrays. She also knew that this frequency band was, due to a quirk of the region's electromagnetic signature that she had documented 4 years ago in a survey report that no one had read, extremely susceptible to interference from a particular kind of broadcast pattern. The broadcast pattern she used was 400 years of human radio transmissions, looped and layered and compressed into a signal that hit every frequency in the Kale targeting band simultaneously. The Kale targeting arrays started receiving, in order, big band music from Chicago in the 1940s, A weather emergency broadcast from rural Queensland. The first episode of a Brazilian comedy program from 2019, and 40 minutes of static from a pirate radio station in Lagos that had been operating without a license in 1987. Their targeting arrays went quiet for 9 hours. 9 hours during which the evacuation ships got out of dock. I watched all of this from the flagship's monitoring room, which the Council had, after significant internal debate I was not privy to, agreed to give me access to. The feed showed fleet movements, relay positions, signal data, and the evacuation ship trajectories coming out of Harvest Station's dock in steady sequence. Kate stood beside me. She watched the screens. She did not say anything for a long time. On screen, the Kale Advance had stopped its movement for the third time in 36 hours. The Hegemony, watching from the other side of the contested zone, had also gone still. Both sides watching something that did not fit their 3-century understanding of how this conflict was supposed to work. "They do not know what to do with us," Kate said. "No. We are not following any pattern they recognize." "No." She looked at the evacuation feeds. The ships were small on the screen, a column of lights moving steadily away from Harvest Station's position, one after another. "Is it working?" she said. "It is working." She let out a breath. I kept watching. The relays were holding. Nina's signal interference was still running. Owen had 2 additional solutions staged that had not been needed yet and hopefully would not need to be. On the screen, the Kale Advance remained stationary. Both war fleets were watching. The entire Galactic Council. As far as I could tell from the diplomatic traffic Kate had been monitoring, was watching. The whole galaxy, 300 years into a war that had calcified into a known pattern, was watching a species that had not been present for the pattern do something entirely outside it. And I felt 2 things at the same time that had no business being in the same body. I felt something like pride, which was smaller and quieter than the word suggests, the kind that does not announce itself, the kind that feels like watching someone you care about do something difficult and do it well. And underneath that, running parallel and deeper and not asking permission, something colder. The knowledge of what this looked like from the outside, what it confirmed, what the projections had said and what we were, in real time, in front of 2 warring civilizations and 17 council delegations, proving true. I thought about the word indeterminate. I thought about what it would mean to earn a label like that and know it was accurate. The pens I had brought in from my quarters, a cup of them on the monitoring station desk, a small habit from an old office, were sitting at the edge of the desk. One of them rolled off when Nina's update came in and the desk vibrated slightly. It rolled to the floor. I did not pick it up. Day 11. The last evacuation ship cleared Harvest Station's designated coordinates at 3:47. Dean Alderton sent one message, 40,000 people, all safe, thank you. I sent back, North England makes good administrators. He sent back a single punctuation mark that I interpreted as a laugh. The Council's diplomatic traffic, which had been running at emergency levels since I declined the treaty, shifted in the morning hours of day 11. 2 intercepted communiques came in. Kate brought them to me at the viewport. She handed them over and stepped back. The first was from the Vreth Hegemony, addressed to the Kale Dominion. The second was from the Kale Dominion, addressed to the Vreth Hegemony. They said different things in different languages, with different diplomatic framing. They said the same thing. Is this what the projections described? Kate watched me read them. Yes, she said quietly, answering a question I had not asked. Both fleets had gone completely still. The entire contested zone had gone quiet for the first time in 300 years. Not peace, not agreement, not anything that had a name yet. Just stillness. Two enormous civilizations looking at each other across the gap and looking at us and understanding, possibly for the first time, that the projections had not been theoretical. They had been a schedule. The emergency session request came from 17 delegations simultaneously. All 17. Unanimous. The same word through 17 different translators. Urgent. The session was called for 48 hours after Harvest Station's last evacuation ship cleared the zone, which was the fastest the Conclave Eternal had convened a full emergency session in living memory. The venue was the main conclave chamber, 700-foot ceiling, central dais, the concentric rings of seating rising like a gradual argument toward the ceiling. I wore the suit. It still did not fit right. It never did, and it never would. It was a suit issued to me by a government office that understood diplomacy better than it understood the person they were sending to represent them, and it sat on my shoulders like a reminder of the gap between those two things. Kate had coffee. She was not drinking it. Owen had sent a message that morning. Whatever you are about to do in there, good luck. Owen Hale does not wish people luck. Owen Hale says things like mission parameters secured and extraction confirmed. He says good luck when the situation is entirely outside mission parameters. I read the message twice. Then I walked into the chamber. The room was full. Not reception hall full, where attendance had meant protocol, and the gathering itself was the message. This was full the way emergency rooms are full. Everyone present because everyone needed to be, the specific weight of gathered attention that only happens when the thing in the room is real. Vral 9 sat in the hegemony delegation's position, all four arms folded, still, the kind of stillness that costs something to maintain. Orvanthal sat in the council governing position, small, gray, hands flat on the table in front of them, not folded, which was a change I noticed because I noticed changes. At the back of the chamber, in a section that had not been on the session floor plan I was given, sat two delegations I had not seen in this chamber before. Kale Dominion, present in person. Not a proxy. I looked at Kate in the observer section. She gave me the smallest nod. I walked to the center dais. 3 exits, 2 sealed, 1 real. The opening procedural statements ran 11 minutes. I did not listen to them. I looked at the room. I looked at Vral 9 and Orvanthal and the Kale delegation in the back. I looked at the 14 other species spread across the concentric seats, each of them carrying the particular tension of beings who had come to a resolution they were not sure they would like. Orvanthal opened the substantive session. Earth's actions in the Harvest Station corridor have been noted by all parties present, they said. The methods employed are outside established conflict engagement frameworks and represent a significant departure from recognized operational conduct. The 40,000 people are safe, I said. Orvanthal stopped. All 40,000, I said, evacuated before the offensive reached their position, not pending review, not awaiting an annexation clause, safe. The chamber was quiet. We acknowledge the successful evacuation, Orvanthal said. However, the methods worked, I said. This was the part where a more experienced diplomat would have been careful. This was the part where measured tone and the accumulated machinery of 3 centuries of conclave protocol would have smoothed the moment into something manageable. I was not a diplomat. I was a special envoy with a title I had received by email on a Wednesday. I would like to address all parties present, I said, including the Kale Dominion delegation. The back of the chamber went still. Vral 9's 4 arms shifted. The Kale primary delegate, tall, composed, wearing the specific posture of someone who is present because they have decided that being present is the only remaining option, looked at me without expression. This conflict has been running for 300 years, I said. 300 years. by the projections your own governments produced 62 years ago, independently, without comparing notes, reaching the same conclusion: Earth's involvement would end it. You have been trying to prevent that outcome ever since. The neutrality agreement was the last version of that prevention. Nobody spoke. I am not here to destabilize the agreement, I said. I am not here because Earth wants this war. We have been trying to reach the stars for 10,000 years. We grow things. We teach things. We build settlements at the edge of our reach and fill them with farmers and doctors and people from New Zealand who want nothing more than to grow food in new soil. I looked at Vral 9. You know what we are also capable of. You have known for 62 years. The projections told you. The last 11 days confirmed it. I paused. I am not going to pretend otherwise. We know what we did out there. We know what it means. The room held itself very carefully. Earth will stop, I said. Right now, today, we will stand down from everything we have deployed in that corridor. We will withdraw and we will step back and we will give your advanced lines their full operational territory again. The Kale delegate leaned forward slightly. Vral 9's translator was running. We will do all of that, I said. And we will agree to a genuine neutrality agreement with full terms, all colonial provisions covered from day one, no review window, every human settlement protected immediately. We will sign it, we will observe it, and we will stay out of your conflict. I stopped. I let the silence sit. I let it sit until it had weight. In exchange, I said, you end this war. The chamber broke. Not the careful breaking of the previous session. This was immediate, all 17 delegations reacting at once. The Kale delegate stood up. 3 council mediators began speaking simultaneously. Vral 9's translator ran so fast it dropped words. I stood at the dais and waited. Not because I was calm. Because I had done 47 push-ups that morning and they were still in my body, and they had a particular weight to them. And that weight was a kind of steadiness, and steadiness was the only tool I had left. Orventhal raised one hand. The room settled. What you are proposing, Orventhal said, is outside the scope of a neutrality negotiation. Yes, I said. You are proposing a complete cessation of hostilities between 2 civilizations who have been in active conflict for 3 centuries. Yes. On the basis of Earth's withdrawal from a corridor operation. On the basis of what Earth demonstrated it is capable of in 11 days, I said. Against 2 fleets with 300 years of experience and equipment we do not own, with civilian relay stations and old survey satellites and a radio archive that predates your current targeting systems by 400 years. The room was quiet again. The projections said Earth would end the war, I said. They did not specify how. I am offering you the version where no one else has to be written into a casualty notation. I looked at the Kale delegate. This is the version where you go home, both of you. You go home and you do not come back to this. The Kale delegate looked at Vral 9. 300 years between them in that look. It lasted 4 seconds. 4 seconds was a long time. The negotiations lasted 9 days. They were not straightforward. Nothing involving 17 species, 2 warring governments, 3 centuries of accumulated grievance, and a treaty framework being built from scratch in real time is straightforward. There were sessions that ran until 3 in the morning. There were terms proposed and withdrawn and proposed again in different language. There were 2 full breakdowns in the Kale hegemony dialogue that Owen and Kate and I held together, with whatever combination of clear argument and sheer persistence was required in the moment. Nina sent maps from Earth. Orventhal mediated with the particular competence of someone who had been doing this for decades and had perhaps always known, in some quiet part of themselves, that the 3-century version of this conflict was not going to end the way it started. Dean Alderton sent a message on day 3. Harvest Station residents want to go back. When can we go back? I sent back, working on it. He sent back, North England is patient. The armistice was signed on the 63rd day, since Earth had declined the neutrality agreement. Not a ceasefire, not a pause in hostilities. A full armistice, ratified by both the Vreth hegemony and the Kale Dominion, witnessed by the full conclave, with a peace framework attached that the Council's legal office said would take another 2 years to fully formalize but whose terms were binding from the moment of signing. 300 years. 63 days. I stood at the dais for the signing and watched both lead delegates put their marks on the document. Vral 9 first, in the formal hegemony style. The Kale primary delegate second, with the precise and deliberate movement of someone doing something they had not expected to do with their life and had decided to do with dignity. Kate was in the observer section. Owen was watching on a live feed from Earth. Leon Cross would write a statement that evening that I would not read until much later. After the signing, the chamber did not celebrate. It was not that kind of moment. It was quieter than that. The kind of quiet that happens when something enormous ends and everyone present is still deciding what to do with themselves now that it has. I left the dais. The gathering that evening happened in the reception hall. All 17 delegations. Catering that the council staff had clearly put genuine effort into, including something that tasted, improbably, like the kind of cake you get at birthday parties when you are a child. Sweet and slightly too much of everything. I ate 2 pieces. Orvan Thal found me at the edge of the room. Envoy Vega, they said. The translator rendered their tone as something between formal and something I did not have a precise word for. The Council will be updating its records regarding Earth's designation. What was our old designation? I asked. Observer species provisional tier. They paused. We are finalizing a revised classification. What are the options? Orvan Thal's hands folded in the way they do when what they are about to say is already decided, but they want to deliver it carefully. The working term, they said, is indeterminate. It is not a negative classification. It is an acknowledgement that Earth's presence in the galactic community does not fit the existing frameworks and will likely require new ones. I looked at the room. 17 species. Food and light and the particular noise of beings who had just finished something 300 years old and were not quite sure what to do with the silence it left behind. Indeterminate, I said. Yes. The most powerful beings in the known galaxy spent 62 years trying to keep us in a box, I said. And the best classification they have for us now is that they do not know what we are. Orvan Thal's face did the thing it did when they were thinking something they were not going to say. The galaxy is larger and stranger than any of us fully understands, Envoy. You are perhaps its strangest new element. They inclined their head in the formal conclave style and moved away into the room. Kate found me later at the viewport. Old habit by now, the 2 of us, the glass, the dark outside. The war fleets were dispersing. Had been since the signing. Slowly, the way things move when they have forgotten how not to be ready for a fight and are teaching themselves the difference between standing down and standing still. Some of the ships were already gone from visible range. Others were moving in directions I did not have a chart for. Going home. Leon sent a message, Kate said. I know. He called it a historic achievement. He would. He is not wrong. He is also writing a speech, I said. He has been writing it since day 1. He will have it ready by the time we land. Kate almost smiled. Are you going to read it? I will read the summary. She laughed, a real one, the kind she did not give out often. We stood at the viewport for a while without saying anything. The fleets were thin now. The sky outside was more open than it had been in 11 days. The harvest station quadrant was officially cleared, and Dean Alderton had already submitted the first resettlement request on behalf of his 40,000 people. "They are going to study us forever," Kate said. "The Council, the Hegemony, the Dominion. Every xenosociologist in the galaxy is going to spend the next 100 years trying to explain what happened." "Let them. You are not worried about the conclusion." "They already have a conclusion," I said. "They have it in 62-year-old projections. It did not change." "It is not comforting, that conclusion." "No. It means we are dangerous," she said, "not as an accusation, as a fact, the way you say the sky is dark at 3 in the morning. We ended a 300-year war in 63 days using relay stations and old radio broadcasts," I said. "I am not sure dangerous is the right word." "What is the right word?" I looked at the viewport. The last visible warfleet was a small light at the far edge of range, patient even in retreat, 300 years of fighting and still patient in everything it did. We had done it in 11. "I do not know," I said. "I have not decided yet." Kate looked at the cup in her hand. She put it on the windowsill. She left it there. I went back to the briefing room before we boarded the return shuttle. No particular reason, just the way you sometimes go back to a room. The monitoring desk was still set up from the evacuation operation. The screens were dark. The maps were rolled. Nina's signal data had been cleared from the display boards. The floor beside the monitoring station was bare except for the pen, the one that had rolled off the desk on day 11. It had been there for days. Whoever had cleaned the room had gone around it. Maybe they had not noticed. Maybe they thought it was meant to be there. Maybe the council's cleaning staff had better things to do than pick up a single human pen from a floor that was not built for that kind of floor anyway. I looked at it for a while. I picked it up, put it back in the cup on the desk. I did not have an explanation for why that felt like finishing something. Some things you do not explain. You just do them and then you go home.